Old stories that light the way. Long before the written word, daytime TV or YouTube, information was passed from one generation to the next in the form of stories. Families and clans would huddle around the fire or sit down for dinner and recount the dramas of catastrophes and triumph played out by the heroes and villains of the past. Over vast stretches of time, these stories became the amalgamation of many different occurrences, and the factual details were lost in time. The moral of these stories, however, became more powerful because only the important parts were remembered and retold. Each of the stories that make up our culture is therefore a distillation of the most important and significant parts of events and wisdom gained over thousands of years. The post-Enlightenment scientific mind tends to see these stories at face value or as accurate versions of historical events. At closer inspection, however, many of these stories contain multiple layers of metaphoric wisdom which are applicable to many facets of life. The story of Hansel and Gretel is one such remarkable metaphor. Two desolate and desperate children, abandoned by their parents, are lost in the woods. They come upon a house made of candy with a friendly old woman outside. The children are lured into the house with the promise of abundance and eternal love. But the house turns out to be a prison, and the woman a blind witch who wants to enslave and eat them. It does not require a great stretch of the imagination to see the similarities between the fable and the numerous Marxist experiments of the past century. The poor parents representing failed or corrupted states, unable to provide for their citizens. The children, representative of the population or the poor and the vulnerable, are left in the woods representing the chaos of war, famine, or economic depression. The house of candy signifies the utopian ideal such as Marxist communism or religious dogma. It promises the easy life filled with indulgences like unearned privilege, impulsive hedonistic pleasure, and irresponsible behavior, everything a child could want. However, the benevolent leader of the revolution invariably turns out to be the devouring witch or the evil, narcissistic megalomaniac. The blindness refers to the inability to see the shortcomings of the leader or the ideology. Like the children, the supporters of the revolution are naive and easily led through the door, even the door symbolizing an election, an uprising, or even a war. Once inside, they have given up the freedom of the outdoors and are now truly trapped. The witch imprisons the boy, fattening him up to be eaten. Equally, the leaders of the revolution will set about looting property and killing or imprisoning the owners until they have consumed everything. The rest of the population are turned into slaves, working hard to prepare the feast for their new masters. The story had a positive twist, though. Gretel grows up and takes responsibility and control of the situation. She deceives the blind monster and defeats her. Hansel is set free and the children run away back to their parents. Similarly, the suffering populace may be shaken from their naivety and saved by strong and forthright individuals willing to take responsibility, challenge the situation, and oust the tyrants. The return to the parents signifies a return to now revived religious, cultural, and economic systems that have sustained them previously. The South African political scene plays directly to this metaphor. The ANC and AFF portray themselves as the benevolent saviors, and the House of Candy is waiting just beyond the horizon. We only need to subdue the enemy and we will reach utopia. The fact is that there is no enemy, and the House of Candy has long been devoured. The blind and fat witches or would-be emperors are still here though, furiously advertising their various houses of candy, grand visions of a land of plenty for all, just come in the door. Reality is, however, different. The obligation to work is stated in one of the oldest known texts. In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread, till thou return to the ground. Anyone who promises anything different is a liar. Necessity to work is as real as old age and death. It is not necessarily ideal, but nothing is. The failure of large tyrannical empires is as old as written history, the story of the Tower of Babel being the most well-known. Like the other stories in Genesis, it is profoundly compact. It is a mere 9 verses long, yet it contains multiple layers of wisdom. The people speaking one language decide to use fired bricks to construct a tower that would reach all the way to heaven and make a name for themselves. God comes down from heaven and after seeing the tower and city decides to confound the language and thus scatter men across the face of the earth. The one language may be seen as the one-party or tyrannical political system in which there is no place for disagreement. The rulers aim to use technology or to establish a perfect state that would be just like being in heaven while bringing glory and fame to its creators. Reality then kicks back and brings about disagreement and confusion, which dismantles the grand utopian dream and creates multiple forms of local government all around the world. Again, this reminds one of the Soviet Union. After the Russian Revolution, Lenin set about expanding his empire. The intention was to subject the entire world under the socialist utopia. This cost more than 100 million lives and failed dismally in 1991. Thus bringing free governments to a multitude of countries around the world. The ANC government has similar tendencies. Their insistence that their policies will usher in utopia, even while the lights won't stay on, show their ideological arrogance and their willful blindness. We, the people of South Africa, need to heed this wisdom and wake up from our naivety. The state is never perfect. It always tends towards corruption because of the ever-changing environment. The old ideas need to be analyzed and updated by wise and responsible individuals. We need to take our freedom back once again, now and in the future. There is no utopia. There's only the constant striving towards it.